My name is Abhi, and in this video we're going to talk about how dieting can lead to eating disorders. Two things I talk about a lot on this channel are weight loss and diets and eating disorders. And it can be very frustrating for anyone affected by this that you start a diet or something, with a positive intent on improving your health, and it can end up having a dramatic negative impact on your mental and physical well-being. Let's start with some definitions. First of all, the definition of an eating disorder as defined by the NHS website is a mental health condition where sufferers use control over food, cope with feelings and other emotional situations. And I think one really important nuance there is that it talks about control over food, not specifically restricting food, because some eating disorders do involve eating more as well. Some of the more common and better known eating disorders that I have spoken about on the channel include anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, and orthorexia, but there are others out there as well. Next up, let's define a diet and let's define dieting. And there is a subtle difference there. First of all, the dictionary definition of a diet is literally just the kind of food and drink that a person or community or animals consume. So it's not specifically about weight loss, it's not specifically about changing your body, it is literally just the food and drink that you eat. The way diet kind of got used in a weight loss context or weight management context is when you look at the term dieting. And the definition of dieting is the practice of eating food in a regulated way to either decrease, maintain, or increase body weight or to change body shape. So that aligns much more closely with the term that we think of when we think of a diet or going on a diet. How common is dieting? I did try and look up some stats. The first recorded diet book goes back to 1863 by a man named William Banting. It's called A Letter on Corpulence Addressed to the Public, and you can read it for free online. I've included a link in the description. And while you're browsing the description, please remember to hit that subscribe button. A study by the CDC found that between 2013 and 2016, 49.1% of adults surveyed had tried to diet at some point in the previous 12 months. According to a 2017 article published in Obesity Review, globally at any given time, 42% of adults are trying to lose weight and 23% are trying to maintain weight. A 2005 article in the American Journal on Clinical Nutrition estimated that weight regain after a diet can be as high as 95%. And the stat that's probably most relevant to what I'm talking about in this video is that the National Eating Disorders Association in the US found that up to 25% of cases of dieting can result in eating disorders. So why do we go on diets? It's usually a very personal reason. The most common ones tend to be to change physical appearance, to improve or change physical and or mental health, or for a very specific sports or performance related goal. For example, say you're in a weight-based sport and you need to lose or gain a certain amount of weight to meet the criteria for the division that you're in. Given we're in a world where vanity sells a hell of a lot, I think the first one, changing physical appearance or trying to improve physical appearance, tends to be the most common one. And the problem with using that as a starting point is that you start from a negative self-view. And what that can do is that it can heighten your emotional triggers and can lead you on a bit of an emotional roller coaster as you're dieting. And that ties your worth to your weight or to your appearance or to whatever aspect of you that you're trying to change. But I guess if you start from a more positive point of view and wanting to improve something that you've already got rather than wanting to come out of a negative view, you might find your journey is more enjoyable, it's easier to stick to, and you don't end up going down the road of an eating disorder. Let's say you enjoy running and you decide that you want to run fast. You already have something that you enjoy that gives you some pleasure and enjoyment, and now you're just trying to enhance that a bit more. You change up your nutrition, you change up your diet, and you get fast, and you enter a bit of a positive side. Your performance has improved, you know what changes you've made, you keep or increase the number of changes in that direction, your performance continues to improve. It's a very simplified example, but that's kind of how you end up in that kind of positive cycle. So coming back to my original point about how dieting can lead to eating disorders, I think the best way to demonstrate it is to give you an example from my own weight loss. So from my heaviest to my lightest, I lost 140 odd pounds. And what happened was I was never particularly confident or extroverted or outgoing person. I was kind of always hidden in the background. I didn't like going out or socializing. And then I went on a diet and I started exercising and I started to lose weight and I got a lot more compliments. I got a lot more attention. I got a lot of praise for losing weight. And that kind of created a bit of positive reinforcement. I think that's the right word. Because I lost weight, that was getting me attention. So in my brain, at least, I associated losing weight and being thinner with being superior. And what then happened was I wasn't just trying to lose weight up to a certain point for my health and for my appearance. I got to a point where I was trying to basically just lose as much weight as possible and get as light as possible and be as thin as possible. And this is where I really started to get some disordered eating patterns. I went through a period of time where my typical day would look like this. I would get up, have some porridge and a banana in the morning. I would then go to the gym and do an hour or so of cardio. And then I would shower and change and then go to work. I'd do my normal working day. Throughout the day, I would mainly just have boxes of raisins or fruit. I'd go to the gym afterwards to get a bit more exercise in. Usually I'd do weights in the evening. And then I'd sort of only have one proper meal at the dinner time. I never thought about getting professional help. The idea of eating disorders was a bit alien to me. The idea of eating disorders in men especially was alien to me. I don't think I was ever at the point where I would have probably been clinically diagnosed with an eating disorder. I think I was probably at the very, very upper level of what would be considered not unreasonable. I was still eating, I was still getting my nutrients in, and I was giving myself a little bit of flexibility on my diet. I'm not a professional, but looking back, I don't think I would have got to the point of being diagnosed with anything if I had asked for help. But that behavior pattern did eventually lead down the road to orthorexia, and that took me a little while to get over. Let's look at getting help or support for eating disorders. Now, in the context of this video, I do want to emphasize not all dieting and not all pursuits of healthy eating or eating in a regulated way is an eating disorder. Pursuing a health or fitness or body image goal is going to require some kind of regulation of food. It will require some discipline, some sacrifice, and there will be some hardship. The distinction, I think, is in terms of how emotionally attached you become to the eating plan that you're following. If you get to the point where it becomes a bit obsessive and it's starting to interfere with your normal day-to-day life, then that's probably, a bit of an alarm ringing that now's the time to maybe get help. And the way I look at it is I always use this kind of simple test. So imagine that your birthday is coming up and you have been on a fairly strict diet, whatever diet you're following, you've been on a fairly strict diet for a little while, your birthday's coming up, and of course that will involve some birthday cake. It's pretty normal to, relax and loosen up on your restrictions and just enjoy the day. But the question is, how do you react to that? Do you feel comfortable relaxing your food restrictions and enjoying yourself and just getting back on track the next day? In which case, good. No matter what we're doing, we still want to be able to enjoy these kind of special occasions. Or do you feel emotional? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel like you need to burn it off right away? Do you feel like you've derailed months of progress? If it's that second one, then maybe now is the time to look at getting some help. Maybe now is the time to recognize that we've gone a little bit too far down that food control route and we need to pull back a little bit. I guess that's kind of an early warning sign, and now would be a good time to look at getting support or professional help. I'll add my normal disclaimer that I'm not a qualified professional, so I cannot advise on specific diagnosis or treatment or anything like that, or give you any specific advice, but I can point to some resources on where to get help, and I'll include a link to that in the description as well. But generally with an eating disorder, and to be fair, probably any mental health condition, the earlier you can catch yourself exhibiting a certain behavior pattern, the easier and the smoother the recovery probably is. Not always, but generally if you can catch it earlier, your recovery will be a bit easier. If dieting doesn't really work for most people, and like I said, in up to 95% of cases it can lead to weight regain, what is the answer here? How do we stop dieting? I think within reason dieting is a helpful tool, especially if you do have a goal to change your physical appearance or change your health for whatever reason. Your reason is your own. The issue, I'd say, is typically in how we approach it. If you start from a negative space, saying, for example, I hate my body, or I'm too fat, or I hate the way I look, or I need to desperately change something. Starting from that negativity is a much more mentally taxing and emotional journey to try and make a change than if you were to start from somewhere positive. So maybe let's look at some of the sort of typical dieting behaviors and try and give them a more positive spin. Instead of thinking about foods that you're banning or restricting, focus on the ones that you're having that feel nourishing to you. Now, barring any medical advice, you probably don't need to ban or restrict any foods too much as long as your overall diet is balanced. But if you are restricting specific foods, that is of course 100% up to you. Instead of thinking about how hard it is and how much sacrifice it is and the sort of mental and physical challenge, think about the time and energy that you're putting in as an investment in yourself. So you're doing it for a health goal, even if it's challenging. You are saying that I'm putting this investment in so I feel healthier, so I can achieve X, Y, Z. Have your end goal in mind, but don't focus on how far away it is. Focus on how much progress you've already made. And lastly, find a positive goal that engages you mentally and physically. The lightest I ever got in my adult life was actually when gyms closed and I had to change my training plan entirely when COVID hit and lockdown started. I couldn't do cardio on equipment, so I started walking a lot more, and I couldn't lift weights, so I had to get better with calisthenics and bodyweight training. And I actually took up yoga, which is something I'd been kind of putting off for years because of how hard I thought it was. And you know what? I felt good. I felt strong. I could move pain-free. I was relaxed. I wasn't stiff at all. It was kind of nice having all those lifted weights just to see what my body could do by itself without that external, whatever the term is, external lever or external stimulus, I guess, added. And then with my walks, I started listening to podcasts and I learned a lot about history. I learned about business. I learned about investing. I learned about starting a YouTube channel. So that was mentally and physically stimulating. And even now, like out of everything I do exercise-wise, I make sure I get my walks in. I aim for 12,000 steps a day, and I have. The only time I've missed my step target is when I had surgery and the first few days of recovery. I was in such a good sort of space with how I felt my fitness was progressing, that I was a bit more relaxed about my diet as well. It was flexible. I wasn't banning or restricting any foods. I was still making sure I was getting plenty of nourishment. My sweet tooth was well looked after, and I was having some kind of dessert every day, and everything just kind of seemed to click. And I wasn't even doing, like, my workouts were super simple, and I was just walking, and I was just enjoying my food and listening to what my gut was saying about how much I should or shouldn't be eating. It just kind of fell into place. I was in a good headspace, and I felt positive about things, and that just kind of was its own kind of self-sufficient cycle. Sorry, I rambled a little bit there, so let's wrap this up with a few bullet points. Dieting can start with positive intentions, but you can't let it become your identity, and you can't get too emotionally attached to one diet or one way of eating. Focus on positives, focus on empowering yourself, and focus on the progress that you're making. And lastly, always aim for progress rather than specifically perfection. It's more sustainable and more consistent than trying to be perfect every time. So that's it on how dieting can lead to eating disorders. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, please drop them below.